Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. The city wants you to pay better attention to intersections. Council is looking at doubling the number of red light cameras to do that. And Essex Town Council is looking at potentially starting something new on Harrow High property. Plus, have you ever thought about singing in a choir, but perhaps you don't have the voice of an angel? Well, you can get your shot this weekend. The only requirement is you have to pay for a ticket. Windsor drivers have dished out millions of dollars in tickets from red light cameras in our city. Now, a new report is suggesting council should double the number of those cameras. Tonight, Chris Ensing digs into the data.
There are 10 of these red light cameras installed at intersections across Windsor. They've been there since January of 2022, and the city has handed out 11,000 tickets because of these cameras. It's cost drivers more than $3 million. Now, City Council, they're being urged to install more of these cameras across the city. Red light cameras, they've been around for a bit here. What do you think of them?
I think they're a good idea, especially on these busy, international roads. They just run right through these lights like they're not even there.
There's too many people that run, and they're not yellow, they're orange. They're going through orange. The yellow is way back there, right? And no, it's a hazard. And it's an accident waiting to happen. If this can prevent anybody from doing that, so much the better.
It's kind of almost like a consumption tax. You choose to buy whatever it is that has this high consumption tax. You drive a certain way, then you're the one that actually is sort of taking that on yourself. You take a risk, you run it, you make it, okay, fine. But if you don't, well, kind of sucks to be you. But at the same time, you kind of are the one that you can only blame yourself.
These $325 tickets are rarely overturned because the evidence is clear. And the city says the cameras are changing driving behaviors, saying that the initial launch came with an increase in rear-end collisions as people slam on their brakes for red lights. But that's now eased off, and data shows a decrease in side impact collisions over 2 years in those areas. Changing traffic patterns in the city could see some of the original 10 locations switch to other intersections. City staff recommend 10 more cameras to cover 6% of Windsor.
The locations, they're not suggesting those yet. That will be decided by looking at collision data with the Windsor Police Service. Council's decision on adding these cameras, that'll be made at next week's council meeting. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor.
A police disciplinary tribunal has dismissed an appeal in the case of a Windsor officer who made a $50 donation to convoy protesters in 2022. In May of last year, Constable Michael Briscoe was ordered to work 80 hours unpaid as a penalty for his donation to the convoy protest. That donation was made on February 8th, 2022. Protests at Windsor's Ambassador Bridge started the previous night. Briscoe's name was found in a database of donors made public after the crowdfunding website Give Send Go was hacked. It wasn't until the appeal did Briscoe raise the abuse of process argument because the information was obtained illegally. The tribunal declined to consider that argument because it wasn't raised during the original hearing. Briscoe's lawyer also argued the penalties imposed went against the officer's charter rights. The tribunal ultimately dismissed the appeal, saying the decision and penalty imposed is reasonable. Considerations for the future of Harrow High School have been long in the making. Tonight, the Essex Town Council will vote on whether to seek a developer to build high-density housing on the property. The town bought Harrow High after it closed in 2016. Essex Mayor Sherry Bondi says the school is in rough shape, needing about $10 million to fix. So she says it makes more sense to build affordable housing.
And so this could be a really good opportunity for the development community to bring us some options for multi-residential and high-density housing. My hopes are kind of shattered that I won't be back in my high school. I was alumni there. We all say forever a Hawk, but we have to look at what makes sense right now, and it doesn't make sense to retrofit and fix up the older building.
The provincial government has officially tabled its new bill that covers various topics this afternoon on the first day back to the legislature. It includes urban boundary changes for some municipalities to allow more housing construction. Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redekop has more.
Our government is getting it done, Mr. Speaker.
A new year, new legislation, as the government looks to rebuild support following a year of controversies, including on the Greenbelt. Here's how the PCs describe what this bill will do.
It will allow Ontario to accelerate construction of transit, housing, and infrastructure projects that we need to support our growing population.
The legislation changes urban boundaries for some municipalities to allow housing construction in more areas. A do-over for the government after reversing a similar law. This time, the Ford government says it's different.
After consultations with the municipalities, they have made the decisions of what parts of it that they want to retain and what parts they're not happy with. So this will reflect those consultations.
Under the bill, the boundaries for Hamilton and Ottawa will not expand. Both cities upset the last time. The opposition leader is skeptical.
I don't trust, and I don't think Ontarians trust this government for 1 second to be messing around in these issues again. This is the same government that basically tried to sell off the Greenbelt.
The government already announced many parts of this legislation, automatic license plate renewals, making it tougher for future governments to add a carbon tax, and speeding up environmental approvals for building highways.
The Get It Done Wrong Act is actually going to take Ontario backwards. It's performative politics at its worst. I mean, this government's already eviscerated environmental protections. They're going to make it worse, primarily because they want to build a $10 billion boondoggle in Highway 413.
Bill 124! The government still has to undo another piece of legislation, Bill 124, that held public sector wage increases at a maximum 1% a year for 3 years, ruled unconstitutional by the Court of Appeal. The province has promised to repeal it.
Yet another reversal, yet getting it undone. Once again, this government is driving in reverse.
To respond, the Premier.
The Premier sidestepped opposition questions on whether he'll apologize for Bill 124 or how much it cost.
How much did this government spend on legal costs to keep down workers' wages on Bill 124?
For the healthcare workers, which we think the world of. We think the world of the nurses.
It's unclear when the government will repeal Bill 124. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
Inflation in Canada is cooling. The overall rate slowed more than expected in January, hitting 2.9%. That's down from 3.4% in December. Senior business reporter Nisha Patel has more.
Lower prices at the pump helped slow inflation last month. Grocery costs are also cooling, with the price of soup and bacon actually falling compared to the same time a year ago. Canadians are also paying less for airfares, clothing, and shoes. Experts say it's evidence that higher interest rates are working, making borrowing more expensive to rein in consumer spending.
A lot of the pent-up demand is gone, and households are hit with the reality that housing prices are very high. The economy is not doing great, and so they are forced to cut back on discretionary spending.
Though there is little relief on the price of shelter, the cost of interest on mortgages remains one of the biggest drivers of inflation, up 27% year over year. Rent spiked nearly 8%.
I'm not just working one job, I'm working 3 jobs just to make ends meet.
Things are so expensive. Like, I wanted to buy strawberries and that seems like a luxury.
I've really just cut back and actually changed my lifestyle to accommodate the change in pricing.
Still, for the first time since last June, overall inflation is back within the Bank of Canada's target range.
Well, they're going to want to see some sustained evidence of price stability being restored. So if this continues to be the trend, what we saw in January here, then the bank can certainly say that they've done a good job.
So while the latest inflation numbers are a step in the right direction, economists expect the central bank to stay cautious and hold its key interest rate steady next month. The first interest rate cut is forecast to come by June. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
It's no secret, surgery wait times in Canada can be long, especially for elective procedures. Those delays, which can last months, have a growing number of patients and doctors turning to private clinics, but that can be expensive, and some people are taking extraordinary steps to get their operations. CBC's Leah Hendry has the story.
Jaya Leela Payet used to manage her juvenile arthritis with medication, but about a year ago, the drugs stopped working. And last fall, x-rays showed her hips had deteriorated faster than expected.
The bones of my hips were totally crushed together.
Her specialist referred her to an orthopedic surgeon, but she still hasn't received a consultation, which means she isn't even on the surgery wait list yet.
I call every week crying, almost screaming because I cannot endure the pain anymore.
Unable to work since last fall, Payet has become increasingly housebound. She relies on her family to run errands and do chores around the apartment.
I'm afraid for her mental health too, because being in bed all the time like that is not what a person her age should be living right now.
Desperate, Payet decided to have the surgery done privately. It will cost $35,000 to have both hips replaced. They're trying to raise the money with a GoFundMe campaign.
I want to have my freedom again, to do my choice, to do activities, to travel, to go back to work. So that
Payet's dire situation isn't unusual.
Just getting even worse, and even more people every week are going to private surgeries to get their surgery done.
Increased demand means more surgeons are working in both the public and private system, like Dr. Adam Hart. He started during the pandemic.
Yeah, it was out of pure frustration.
In the public system, Hart said he's limited to 1 or 2 days of surgery a week. The backlog has created 2 waiting lists for him, one for a consultation and another for the surgery itself. His surgery wait list is 400 days.
If I saw all my consults in my inbox, then my wait list would be, it'd be like multiple years long. So I limit the number of new patients, new consults that I see.
Payet didn't want to wait any longer. Her surgery is scheduled for April, and she's excited about getting her life back. Leah Hendry, CBC News, Montreal.
If you've never been part of a choir, you could get your chance this weekend. And you don't have to be a good singer. You don't need any experience. You just need to like Fleetwood Mac songs. As the CBC's Dawson Chen learns, a Toronto-based choir is holding a sing-along.
What would you say is the philosophy of choir?
My opinion is that choir exists to make people happy, to create connection through music, and to just give people the greatest night out ever.
And also creating something, to be creative, to listen to the people around you, to harmonize with people around you. It's like it's really like a big celebration of like what it is to be a community.
Say someone is a shower singer and they don't feel fully confident in their voice in a public setting. What would you say to convince them to come to the show and participate?
Choir is for everybody, all levels of singers. And I personally feel that we live in a world that really judges people a little bit too hard about their singing ability.
So Fleetwood Mac is the theme of the show. Does the show require any kind of knowledge or fandom of Fleetwood Mac in order to attend and participate?
It's good to brush up, listen to the greatest hits, a few times if you want, put it on the house. All the lyrics are on the screen. We guide people through different parts and phrasing and harmonies and things like that, and just build it over the course of the show.
"44 years ago, the town of Essex was making plans to rebuild part of downtown. That's after an explosion leveled an entire town block, which made news around North America. This report done by former CBC reporter Michael Foreman on the efforts to rebuild.
This was the scene moments after an explosion and fire early last Thursday morning. The explosion demolished almost a block of the town's main street, shook some residents literally out of their beds, and blew windows out for blocks. When the sun came up, firemen were still hosing down the smoldering ruins. From the air, the town looked like a 10-ton bomb had hit it. Later, an investigation determined the blast was caused by natural gas. The gas had filled a downtown store when a car plowed into the side of the building, breaking off a gas meter. Tonight, the Essex Town Council met to consider hiring a London architect to study and design a new downtown to replace the rubble.
The town of Essex appointed Mr. Nick Hill
as a planner to prepare a concept plan for the redevelopment of the downtown area.
Council unanimously passed the resolution to pay Hill $12,875 for his consultation and are hoping to split the bill with the province. The Hill study will be sent to the province following another resolution tonight asking the town of Essex to be declared a disaster area deserving of provincial funds.
Another beautiful February day. We're sitting at about 8 degrees right now, and a very special person is back on the show tonight to talk about it. Your weather forecast coming up after the break. Yes, your eyes aren't lying to you. That's our favorite meteorologist, Colette Kennedy, who is back tonight. Colette, we have certainly missed that smiling face of yours.
Oh, I've missed all of you guys and hearing your voice, seeing your face, Meg. So really nice to be back. And I want to thank, I've heard from some of our viewers too. So thanks for reaching out, everyone. And let's get to it, shall we? Shall we talk about your weather and see if I still remember how to do this? They say it's like riding a bike, but I don't ride a bike very well. So that phrase always kind of makes me a little bit nervous. Anyway, normal high for this time of year, 1 degree. And where were we today? How about 8 degrees? So yeah, some very mild conditions, a little closer on that overnight low, but still. Here we are. Our current temperatures obviously falling off with the sun setting, but still above freezing and just hanging on there. Chatham-Kent at 1, 4 degrees though in Windsor, and Sarnia sitting at 4 degrees as well. And the wind's kind of helping us out. Yes, a southerly flow. I know it's southeasterly, but it is that flow that's pushed the temperatures up today, and they're actually going to push them up even more as we go through the day tomorrow. So we do have a few days with the mild conditions before we see much of a change in this. Now, overnight tonight, mostly we have clear skies, and we're certainly with that looking at dry conditions, but we have some energy coming our way. Of course, there's got to be something that's going to be coming into our skies. So we're going to see some increase in cloudiness tomorrow. We'll have a slight chance of a shower actually tomorrow, but that gets a little more organized, and we increase that chance as we go into Wednesday night and Thursday. And with that, we'll see the rain showers kind of pushing along the north shore of Lake Erie for your Thursday. So it's somewhat isolated Wednesday. Most of it stays north, so you get kind of tagged more towards Sarnia and London, and then eastward from there. But we do have the clouds coming in, and then you're going to see this next batch moving in. Right now, the way it is tracking keeps most of it to the south, but as it pushes in, at least some of this rain is going to move from Windsor along the north shore of Lake Erie over towards the Niagara region, and so that does come into play. Have the umbrella around if you don't tomorrow, have it there for Thursday. Looking at those rainfall amounts with the current track that I'm anticipating, we're talking about 10 to about 15 millimeters of rain. Now, if that shifts, okay, further south, those will drop a little bit further north, then we will see those enhanced and maybe pushing up to more like 15 to 20 millimeters. Overnight tonight, we slip below freezing, and so we'll also see a wind chill. Winds aren't terribly strong, but it's enough to drop us back to feeling like -5 to -6. And then as we move through the day tomorrow, as you can see from this is not the right graphic. We are actually going to have our temperature, I told you, it's like riding a bike, and I don't do it well, pushing up towards about 12 degrees with that slight chance of showers, and then we're going to see things from there moving into the more widespread rain showers as we go into Thursday. Something had to go wrong.
Well, Colette, here's the thing. The first day back is always the worst.
Just don't look at this.
Yeah, and you're almost done. You're almost done. Your first day back is almost over.
Yeah, now I'm going to spend like the next hour trying to find where the graphic I actually made has gone into space, but okay.
Tomorrow's a new day. Thanks so much for that, Colette.
You're welcome. Nice to see you, Meg.
Well, yesterday was Family Day. Today is Pet Day. Coming up, we share with you a few ways you can love your furry friend a little extra. The International Court of Justice is continuing its hearing into whether Israel has a right to occupy lands claimed by Palestinians. Canada was scheduled to make a presentation today, but didn't. The government said it maintains the position it took in earlier written submissions. Canada says the court should not respond to a request to issue an opinion on the matter. Meanwhile, international calls continue for an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. Canadian Cabinet Minister Ahmed Hussein added his voice to that chorus during a visit to the Rafah border crossing in Egypt today. But at the United Nations, the U.S. has vetoed the latest Security Council resolution for a pause in the fighting. At the same time, the U.S. is circulating its own proposal for a ceasefire. The average asking price for rent in Canada has reached nearly $2,200 a month. That's a 10% increase from this time last year. With vacancy rates plunging to an all-time low, tenants across the country are asking governments for help. But in Quebec, a long-standing tool that helped moderate rent increases could be about to disappear. CBC's Alison Northcott has more on the so-called lease transfer and the province's changing rental landscape.
This is my kitchen.
When Satya Ortiz-Gagné was moving out of his last apartment, he wanted to transfer the lease so a new tenant could pay the same rent.
To be able to refuse an increase in the rent, I think it's the only tool that we have right now to be able to keep it just a little bit low.
But housing advocates say that tool is about to lose its power. A new law that could pass as early as this week gives landlords the right to refuse lease transfers for any reason. Quebec's housing minister says the bill is meant to strengthen protections for renters.
That was my goal, better protect the tenants against eviction so that they're not taken by surprise, that they receive better compensation if they have to leave.
Montreal was long known for its lower housing costs, but rents have been rising. An average two-bedroom jumped nearly 8% last year alone. Tenants' rights groups have been fighting Bill 31, arguing giving landlords more power will lead to discrimination.
It will take away tenants' rights to carry out lease transfers, which has historically been one of the few levers that tenants have to keep rents affordable, to support each other through what's become one of the worst housing crises in Quebec history.
Landlords argue while some parts of the bill will complicate their lives, having more say over who can take over a lease and when is a good step.
Every year I have lease transfer, and there's a disconnect when you look at the price that is paid for that unit and what I would need to invest just to maintain that unit viable.
While there are lease transfers in other cities, experts say Quebec tenants have used them for years to try to keep rents low. Now some worry rents will just keep rising. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Yesterday was a day to love your human family members, and today it's all about your pets. It's National Love Your Pet Day. Whether they walk, crawl, or swim, pets are known to reduce stress and lower blood pressure. Owners are being encouraged to ensure their pets' vaccines and identification tags are up to date. Humans have had pets as far back as 10,000 BC when they domesticated wolves, with remains from people living between the 3rd and 1st century BCE found accompanied by some form of animal remains. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. And don't forget to watch The National tonight at 9 on CBC News Network, 10 p.m. on the CBC News app, CBC TV, and streaming on CBC Gem and CBC Explore. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.